How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? Reporter George Robertson from the BBC coming to you live from our Middle Eastern offices. How do you do? I'm here today to talk to you all about the very unclear and very subjective area of international law when it comes to the use of force in defending state interests and civilians, called proportionality, and how the BBC uses it, especially when it comes to framing and judging the Israeli conflict in Gaza happening today. So, proportionality, as enshrined in international law, goes back to a very recent case in 1838 called the Carolina case, which strangely involved the British use of force against the Canadian uprising, where the British took an American merchant ship used by Canadians to fight the British and sent it over Niagara Falls and tragically killed 2 Americans on board that ship. And the use of force there, in order to assess whether or not a use of force is reasonable, it has to be deemed not extreme and thereby proportional. It's a very clear and not at all subjective test in its applications, and as I said, it has not been followed up clearly or any well-formed manner since 1838, and how it applies to 2014 is very simple. I will just give you a few examples of recent conflicts in the 20th century and the 21st century, and how the BBC views them, and then how the BBC views Israel's conflict against the Hamas forces in Gaza today in 2014. So let us begin. So let us look at World War II, and the numbers speak for themselves. You see, the UK and the US together in a scheme of strategic bombing bombed civilian centres in Germany, and well, we killed about 500,000 German civilians. We bombed them in Cologne, we bombed them in Dresden, we bombed them in Berlin, and I hope you don't think we thought we were bombing German generals or military supplies there. We were bombing the civilian centres because we wished to break the morale of the German people in their line in the war. So we killed 500,000 civilians, German civilians. The numbers speak for themselves. That was proportionate. Let us look at another example in Vietnam. Tens of thousands of North Vietnamese civilians burnt, napalm, bombing population centres there. Proportionate. Invasion of Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom to oust Saddam. Tens of thousands of civilians killed. Unfortunate collateral damage. Use of force. Iraq, thousands of kilometres away from England or the US. Proportionate use of force. So let us come today now to Gaza. Unfortunately, hundreds of the Gazan population had been killed in the Israeli use of force against Hamas missiles and Hamas terrorist infiltrations. Hundreds of them killed, most of whom are males of fighting age, but we won't let that get in the way. Clearly, those hundreds of deaths, the numbers speak for themselves. That's disproportionate use of force by Israel. The numbers speak for themselves. You see, more German military and civilian casualties were incurred by Germany in World War II than the British and the US combined. However, the numbers speak for themselves, and clearly the US and the UK were using proportionate force, and they were just in their use of force against Germany. The numbers speak for themselves also in the Palestinian conflict against Israel. More Palestinian deaths and terrorist and military deaths have accrued to the Palestinians, and clearly those numbers speak for themselves, that Israel is clearly the aggressor in disproportionate use of force. Can't you see the clear use of proportionality in international law by the BBC, passing judgment on Israel? You see, let us go through that rule of thumb, a very clear rule of thumb, in applying how proportionality should be viewed in terms of any conflict. You see, when other countries use force, particularly the US and the UK, when they use force to defend their interests, thousands of kilometres away, their use of force is always proportionate. But when Israel uses force on its doorstep against threats to its civilian populations, their use of force is automatically disproportionate. Very simple. So let's go through that again. Other countries, proportionate use of force. Israel, disproportionate. Let's go through that again. Other countries, proportionate. Israel, disproportionate. Oh, just a moment. I'm getting a facsimile here. Oh, some news in. It seems 24 Hamas fighters were killed in fighting in Gaza City. Well, that title won't get me a promotion or my new Porsche now, will it? Let's change that a bit. Dozens slain in Israeli bombardment in continued Gaza, blah blah. That sounds wonderful, and that will get me my new Porsche by Christmas and my promotion. So, you see, reporting is very easy when it comes to the BBC and when it comes to applying proportionality. Now, I know a lot of you at home might be wondering what perhaps lends this disposition of the British, and particularly the BBC, when it comes to reporting the Israeli conflict? Well, let me simply explain it to you by taking a step back and looking at history, the broad spectrum of history. You see, during World War II, us British knew exactly what the Jerry and the Bosch were getting up to against the Jewish civilians in Europe under Nazi control. We knew clearly what was going on, and well, frankly, we wanted to wash our hands of it. We didn't want to intervene, we didn't have the resources, and we definitely didn't want to devote the resources to Jewish interests during the war. So we've been carrying a bit of a cross of guilt for all these decades, and nothing helps us remove that cross of guilt and wash our hands of the guilt than by pointing the finger at Israel and saying, well, look, you see, they're quite bad after all. They weren't worth saving or doing anything about to begin with. You see, that helps us, makes us feel better, and it certainly helps me sleep better in my 3-story flat in Trafalgar. So moving forward, that's one element. And another element in the British general disposition towards Israel is that, frankly, we were defeated by the Jewish freedom fighter groups, namely the Irgun, the Lechim, and the Haganah, in the uprising against our jewel in the British Empire that was British Mandate Palestine. We were quite disgraced at our defeat in 1948, so we're rather ruffled and flabbergasted by that, and that leads to general animosity and belligerence to the state of Israel, and hence our reporting here by the BBC. Again, I hope you take none of this personally. A lot of it is really about my promotion. A lot of it is about my British insecurity and my British belligerence towards the state of Israel. It is nothing personal and has absolutely nothing to do with the facts. Most importantly, it has to do with my promotion and getting a new Porsche by Christmas time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on proportionality, and I hope you take the take-home message of the clear, objective test of proportionality in the use of force, particularly the use of force by Israel in defending its civilians against Gaza bombardments, and that is simple. Other countries' use of force in defending their interests, proportionate. Israel's use of force in defending their civilians, disproportionate. Very clear. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you and good day.